All right, let's talk about some users here. So every user, we can go in and we can write commands that give them permission to do things. All right, so I can come in here and let me see if I can get my little graphics pad here to work so to make this a little easier. There we go. I can do a command that gives George, let me grab my pen tool here, there we go, permission to enroll a student. So George is a guidance counselor. Pretend he's a guidance counselor in our school database. He can enroll a student. That means, what does that really mean, enrolling a student? It means he has permission to create a new student in the student table. Okay, so we give him permission to do that. And we also give George permission to make an entry in the schedule table. Okay, he can add a schedule. We also give him permission to delete entries from the schedule table. And since he can create students, what if a student changes their address, they come in the guidance department, want to change it, we'll give him permission to edit their contact info, right? Sally is also a guidance counselor. Okay, so Sally works here. We have to give her permission to enroll a student. We have to give her permission to add a schedule. We have to give her permission to delete a schedule. We have to give her permission to edit contact info. Hey, great. Next week, somebody decides they want them to be able to enroll a student in Drug-Free Clubs of America. All right, so we create a club table. Maybe it's a club table. Let's see, how do I do this? Okay. So they get to work with clubs. Now so this clubs table, I have to give people to read and write and add and delete to that. Okay. So I'm going to have somebody has permission to create data in clubs, alter data in clubs, delete data from clubs. I'm just going to limit it to just this one. But remember, that's adding 3 different things they need to be able to do. Okay. So now what? Now what happens? I have to go back and I have to give George permission to clubs and I have to give Sally permission to clubs. And remember, I condensed 3 different things they need to be able to do that clubs table. So really there's 3 more lines coming from each of them, right? Next week, Bill gets hired. Bill's our newest guidance counselor. Now I have to go through, I have to create an account for Bill. And we saw what that takes, right? Then once Bill is created, I have to give him permission to enroll a student. I have to give him permission. And every single one of these is a command to grant or revoke permissions on tables and database objects. We'll learn about grant and revoke in the upcoming videos. Okay? Grant and invoke is what actually gives people these permissions to do it. But you can see real quickly, I've got a real mess here. Okay? Bad enough that my artwork's bad and I don't know how to use a graphics pad pretty bad. Every time I add a user, I have to run, maybe there's 50 commands down here to get them all the things they need to be able to do. I have to run that all for the user. If I decide guidance counselors, they're not allowed to delete schedules anymore. Now I have to go to run a command on George so he can't delete schedules, and Sally so she can't delete schedules, and Bill so he can't delete schedules. It's a lot of work, right? Running these commands over and over and over and over. All right, so I'm going to undo all this. And we're going to talk about roles. Okay. So what do I want to do? I want to make a role. This is going to be called the guidance role. Okay. This is the role for guidance counselors. Okay. And now instead of giving permission to enroll a student to George and enroll a student to Sally and enroll a student to Bill, I am going to give them permission. The guidance role, say the guidance role is a role that is allowed to enroll a student, add a schedule, delete a schedule, edit contact info. Okay. I want to put a club out here. Make entries about clubs. Bingo. The guidance role is now allowed to make an entry about clubs, right? That was one command to give that to the guidance role. And then I put George in the guidance role, I put Sally in the guidance role, and I put Bill in the guidance role. Okay. So if George and Sally were already here and I add Bill, rather than having to add Bill to student, add schedule, delete schedule, edit contact info, and club, all I got to do is one command adding Bill to the guidance role. If I decide I don't want guidance counselors to be able to do one of these things, I delete it. And in this case, you know, I take, I don't know how to use my art tools well enough to erase one of those lines, but you get the idea. Okay. Now I'm dealing, when I'm changing what a person in a certain role can do, because they're all the same. They all have the same job, right? Okay. And maybe one of these is a supervisor. Okay. Maybe supervisors have a whole different set of permissions that they can do. Okay. And I'm not going to put a bunch on here, but let's just pretend. Let me go back to my pen tool. Supervisors got a whole bunch of permissions under it. And Bill is the supervisor in the guidance department. So not only does he get the guidance role, he also gets the supervisor role. And that would give him permission to whatever things supervisors are allowed to do. Okay, so we use roles to help manage these permissions, so we're not typing hundreds of commands all the time. Okay, and SQL Server has a bunch of roles built in, and in the next video we're going to look at a lot of the built-in roles that are built into SQL Server, because those do come up sometimes on certification tests.